Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Less Stress, More Peace and Happiness Summit. We are thrilled that you've joined us and you're investing a little time in learning some great information because it can literally be life-changing when you know how to manage stress. And all of our speakers have great topics. They're all in the natural wellness arena. And so you can feel really good about that. And you're just going to learn so many things that you can do at home to reduce stress and increase calm, peace, love, and joy in your life. So my name is Janine Wooten. I'm your host for the summit. And today I am going to introduce you to someone really interesting. You're going to love this talk. We have Andrea Larsen. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Andrea, and then we will bring her on. So Andrea is a mother of three, an herbalist and nutritionist who aims to help people fall in love again with the natural world and their own amazing bodies. She does this by helping people recognize the deep connection between their food, their thoughts, and the natural environment, and teaching them how to nurture and nourish themselves in those relationships. She's also a contributor to the book, Nourishing Your Nervous System, What You Need to Know to Care for Yourself in Stressful Times. So please welcome with me, Andrea Larsen. Hi, Andrea. How are you?
Doing very well, thank you. How about yourself?
Doing well. I'm really excited to have you on the summit and learn more about your topic.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I was wondering if I'm going to step back and give you the floor. I like to have the speaker front and center, and we'll put your title. So I was wondering if you could just start by telling us a little bit about your story, your background, like how did you end up, being in this space and doing what you do? I always think that's fascinating and people love to hear that.
Absolutely. Well, I grew up in a home that was completely conventional. So we had no talk of natural medicines or holistic food or any of that. Although my mom did have a small garden and did do a lot of cooking, we still ate, your very typical standard American type diet. And because of that, I was quite sick as a child. I had one cold after another. It would always transform into some sort of lung thing that lasted for months and months. And then it seemed like I was better for a short period of time before the next illness would hit. By the time puberty came, there was a lot of hormonal issues and acne and weight gain. And I was tired all the time. And here I was like a young child.
Wow.
And you go to the doctor and it seemed to be sort of normal. It was something that was common. It wasn't, there was never questions that were asked about what I was eating or drinking or doing. So it didn't cross my parents' mind that something was seriously wrong. It never really occurred to me either. And then as a teenager, I ended up house sitting for friends of my parents, and someone had lent those people I was house sitting for a book. And I was sitting there going, you know what? The book had a title of something along the lines of Natural Cures Never Get Sick Again. And it absolutely intrigued me because here I was always sick. So I picked it up and read it cover to cover within that 24-hour period. And all sorts of light bulbs just went off for me. The book completely outlined the interrelationships between our food and the way that our food is processed and comes to market, and those same companies and how they have shareholders that own stock in the pharmaceutical companies. So it outlined all of the corruption that was going on with our food system and our medical system as well.
Yes.
And for me, it was just like the rose-colored glasses were smashed and there was no going back. And so it was forward. And immediately I came home and told my parents we were only buying organic food. At this point, they thought I had lost my mind, and they were not on board yet. So I got 3 jobs. Here I am in high school. I worked 3 jobs. I bought all my own groceries, and I refused to eat food that was no longer fitting in my value system. And I noticed such immediate results. I lost weight immediately. My skin improved within a few months. My hormonal issues were almost completely normalized. I stopped getting sick. And when I did get sick, I would recover way faster. And that got better and better and better. And within, I'd say about a year, I felt like an entirely new person.
Wow.
And so the proof was in the pudding, and it really propelled me to make that my entire career path. And I just wanted to share everything I learned with as many people as possible, because I had, before that time, had no understanding of how deeply the foods that we were eating were impacting your physical, emotional, mental health, and just how dramatic changing just what was going into my body 3 times a day would have. So I wanted other people to be able to have that information and be able to make those choices.
Yeah, that's great. That is a really interesting story. And it seems like that little 24 hours of house sitting was divine intervention.
Yeah, it was. I was house sitting for a few weeks there, but it was discovering that book that really just changed my entire direction. And funny enough, the people who were gifted that book to borrow, they never even read it. So it was kind of stuffed down and forgotten about. And
it was there for you.
Yeah, it changed my entire life. So
yeah, I love that. And you're right. When we think about it, if you're putting stuff in your body 3 times a day, I think so many people are suffering from the same thing, and they don't know. And you're right. Doctors they're not trained to think that way. So I don't fault them. They're looking through their own specialty or their own glasses or whatever. But yeah, it can totally make a difference. And I really love that you saw immediate results. And then, like you said, at the end of the year, a completely different person. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then I love that you took, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, it just snowballed from there. It's like the more that I learned and the more I integrated, and then became sort of my own little, test, being able to experiment with everything I was learning and experiment on myself first. And then I had children, and being able to experiment with various natural remedies on them, and just how well it worked. Whenever my children would get sick, or whenever I would have something and turn to natural remedies, and it would work faster and better than any other like conventional therapy that I had ever used before. So
exactly. And generally with no side effects.
With no side effects. And just great results.
Exactly.
And
exactly. It's very empowering information, and it's very encouraging. So that's why I like to share stories, because somebody might be listening that really relates to that, and they don't know why they don't feel good, but yeah, the what you call the standard American diet, the SAD, it's sad.
Sad diet.
Sad diet. So yeah, that's beautiful. So let's switch to like specifically the summit being on reducing stress and anxiety. How would you say what you do is it certain herbs or remedies that you have in mind that you want to share with people that specifically would help reduce stress, calm people down? And you can, you tell me, or is it both? Like maybe also, improve the diet and improve the lifestyle, the whole package.
Yeah. Well, you probably have listened to several other speakers at this point. And so some of your audience will be familiar with the sort of holistic concept of how closely interwoven various bodily systems are. So when it comes to stress, it's all encompassing of how we treat our overall health, and then how well our body can handle stress. So for me, I look at it at this multi-layered approach where what you're eating sets up your foundation, because I don't know if you've had anyone come in and do gut health stuff yet, but
yes,
for me, it's like the awareness that you're never feeding your body, you're actually feeding the microbes that live inside of you. And then they transmute that food and medicine into various components then your body then gets to use. So when it comes to stress management, the more vitality that your body has, the more ingredients it has of nutrition, the better you can handle stressors that come in, whether they are perceived stress or they're physical stress from overwork, or you're a parent and you're up half the night with your children, or more than half of the night.
Right.
So whether it's a physical stress or a perceived stress, emotional stress, all of those things our body handles more effectively when we have the proper nutrition that our body needs. And then we can take additional things like herbal medicines to further support. So there are herbs such as St. John's wort or wood betony, and I will actually be able to share some resources with how to learn more about these herbs and utilize them in your daily routine, so that you will be able to find that resource after the summit. But yeah, those herbs can help tonify the vagus nerve. They can help stimulate the enteric nervous system. They can help calm and relax and sedate nerves that may be a little bit frayed from living in that fight or flight. So there are various ways and mechanisms that herbal medicines can be used on a daily basis in your the wellness routine that you're already doing. They can be added very easily, whether it's adding a tea or some tincture or even capsules. Sometimes if you've got a lot of neck and shoulder tension, you can get some St. John's wort oil and use that as a massage for yourself, as one example. So there are numerous ways to get herbal medicines into the body, and they can help on so many different levels when it comes to specifically the nervous system. And when it comes to stress and how our body deals with stress, I think there's no other system in the body that really shows the link so strongly between our emotional health, our mental health, and our physical health, and just how one affects the other. So physically, the more nutrition that our body is taking in and absorbing, the better our emotional health and resilience, and the better our mental health is, and vice versa. If you can be really strong in body, but if you've got a lot of negative self-talk and our attitudes are full of fear and negative self-talk, and we don't have a lot of support for ourselves or in our community, that also impacts our physical health. So it goes both ways. And I think when it comes to the nervous system, it becomes really, really obvious. So the more you can do to support your nervous system, really get out of that fight or flight, get into the parasympathetic rest, digest phase of your nervous system, then everything starts to calm down, and you'll notice the healing that needs to be occurring is.
That makes sense. I was going to ask you which comes first, but it sounds like reducing the stress, then your body can actually absorb the nutrients. So
yeah,
I mean, I know they go hand in hand and not necessarily one before the other, but I love how you've described how they're also interrelated and connected.
Yeah, I think it's really easy. And that's why herbal medicine is so important for me. It's this holistic approach of realizing that we are not able to swing super far at one end of the pendulum or the other, or imbalance occurs. So if we only focus on our physical health and we ignore the effects of our emotional state and our support networks and our self-talk and all of those things, then we do ourselves a disservice. And at the other end, if we only focus on Louise Hay and those beautiful messages that we can tell ourselves, and we only focus on our mental and emotional states, and we ignore the physical body, then we also do ourselves a disservice. So it's recognizing that both are important and they can be integrated and they affect each other. And with herbal medicine, we get to, and especially when you're thinking of herbal medicine, I think of it as just another way of providing nourishment for our cells of the body. So these plant constituents are providing nutrients and medicines that the body is acting on. So it's not just that we're taking these medicines and then thinking about them in the same way we think of pharmaceuticals. They actually have a much deeper and more holistic experience that is felt in the body, and everything from the microbiome. So all of your different fungi and bacteria are also benefiting from these medicines and then acting as a result on your physical body and your emotional well-being.
I love that. So how would someone know if they're out of balance? I mean, maybe they know, but they're not tuned in. Maybe they know at some level, but they're not tuned in. Is there something you could tell people, look for these, if you're presenting with this, or this, and maybe it's just sluggish or brain fog? I'm just, if you're out of balance, and then what it looks like on the other side, because what you're doing is giving people hope, and we want people to have hope so they'll take action.
Yeah, absolutely. So stress is felt because we're also biochemically unique, it's felt
Mhm.
differently for different people. So,
Mhm.
for a lot of people, the first realm we notice is digestive disturbances. People have
Mm.
a really hard time breaking down and absorbing their food. So maybe you've got a lot of heartburn or bloating,
Mm.
constipation, flatulence, that kind of stuff going on. That might
Mhm.
be an indicator that, hey, your digestive system is not able to fully be regulated because you're in
Right.
fight or flight, and that your
Uh,
digestion is sort of put to the side so that your
right.
body can deal with that perceived threat or that real threat that you may be dealing with.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
digestion is that first sort of realm. The other one would be, do you have like high blood pressure? Are you having panic attacks? Are you
Mm.
sleeping poorly? Are you dealing with lowered immunity, getting frequently sick a lot?
Uh-huh.
Those kinds of things are also important to be on the lookout for. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so those are ways that stress shows up in the body and are
Mhm.
good indicators that we need to bring things back into balance.
Nice, nice. And then is there something, you mentioned St. John's wort.
Yeah,
What about if someone wants, well, you make your own, right? You like
I
actually make
do.
some of your own. So
Yeah.
that's so wonderful. I love that idea.
I
I'm
love
wondering,
being able to go out into the
right.
garden and go into my community and know exactly which plants to turn into medicine that I can utilize. But that, that can be quite a complicated step for people. So even if it's just going to your local health food store and finding tinctures that are made from local herbalists or even
Oh,
slightly
okay.
larger companies, that
Uh-huh.
can be a great first step. And then as someone starts to utilize herbal medicines and they start to have really positive results and get excited by that and more
Mhm.
empowered to keep learning, then it can be a really exciting journey to then learn how to make your own from home, because
Yes, absolutely.
traditionally that is what every family did for thousands and thousands of years. The mom or the grandmother in the home would be making medicines from plants to nourish the
Exactly.
family. So
Exactly.
yeah.
So I'll tell a little, personal what got me into natural wellness and natural remedies. My youngest son is 34, and when he was born, he was really sick, and it was really frightening. And I wasn't getting. And we're from a traditional medical family too. Actually, there are three doctors, three nurses, and a CNA in the family. My dad practiced medicine for 60 years. He just retired a year and a half ago. So we never ever thought to question. We just didn't. But when I was in that situation where my back was against the wall and I did not know what to do and nothing was working, and we started seeking alternative solutions. So that's what started me on this path 34 years ago. At that time, the connecting thought was I remember the struggle and holding my baby and my belief, and I verbalized it to everybody I came across. I feel like everything we need is in nature, but the information has been lost. I
Yeah,
said that over and over and over again. And
it's
so
true.
when I finally started finding something that worked, it's just it's so wonderful and so exciting. And I love what you're doing so much because we need that information back.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. It becomes this
Yeah.
greater mission. So for me, it started, I think, as it does for many of us, where it was more of like a selfish motive. It's like, I don't feel good in my
Mhm.
body. I want
Mhm.
to feel better. So I was desperate at that time to do something new that would change what was going on for me. And as I
Mhm.
started to feel better and heal, it was exciting, but then I had more energy and more
Right.
light and more enthusiasm to not just help me, because now I was feeling great. Now it
Right.
became this greater cause of helping other people. And then in
Perfect.
developing these relationships with plants and community and other people, just recognizing on a global scale how impactful it is
Mhm.
to be able to eat and medicate in a way that actually promotes global health, not just
Right.
individual health.
Right. And it's the way it was intended to be from the beginning.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and no corruption and all that,
Yeah. No
hidden
patent.
agendas. Right. Yeah. No, right. No patents, no hidden financial agendas and keeping us ill. So yeah, I love it. That's really interesting. and since you make your own, that reminds me of another question. And I love that you said, for people that can be overwhelming. I was going to ask you, how hard is it to learn that, and what resources would you like? I would love to do that. I live on a big piece of property now. I'd love to have, plants available to me. Is it difficult to start? Are there resources you would suggest? I see on Facebook all the time the ad that says the Book of Lost Herbal Remedies or something like that. Do you have that book? I'm wondering if
I
it's
actually
any
have
good.
that as an ebook on my computer. And yeah, I think that Nicole, the doctor who developed that, has done a really great job with her marketing. And so that's a great place that you can start.
Okay.
But there are
Yeah,
so
yeah.
many other resources.
Mm-hmm.
And for people who love reading books, then buy books. Like, there are so many gardening and herbal medicine books that are great resources. But if you're not really a great, an avid book reader, and that's not where you derive joy in learning, then you might prefer YouTube videos or doing an online course. And actually, I am developing one right now. So I run an herbal medicine school, and I am turning my in-person content into an online version. So that will be available within the next year or two. Hopefully, is the plan. So,
well,
but there are
we'll keep everyone updated, because I know people are going to want to connect with you and learn more for sure. That's so cool.
The number one thing I think that is the best place to start is if you have even a backyard patio that you can put some potted herbs, start growing plants. Learn about 5 to 10 different ones and start growing them and tasting them and using them. And you'll learn more just doing that than any book could ever teach you.
Yeah, you're right. So when Mark was little, my son that's 34, and it turned out the issue, and I think probably with a lot of people that, and they don't even know, but the issue that we didn't know was he's allergic to almost everything in the environment. It was the clothing, the snaps on the clothing, the dog, the carpet, the food.
Yeah.
We ended up, removing carpeting and putting wood and organic. You mentioned switching to organic. At that time, our grocery had a few apples and a few oranges was the organic, right? The organic selection, because it was that long ago. So when we were in a suburban neighborhood, I just took a corner in the backyard and we planted plants and we did the best we could. But I remember, I will tell you, that broccoli that I grew was the best broccoli I ever tasted. And it was just in a suburban backyard, right? But it was from the earth and it was picked fresh. And so,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's worth the effort. It's worth learning.
And here you can see, for me, it makes perfect sense that your son is 34. He would have been born at the tail end of 1989 or 1990?
89, yes.
Yeah, 89. So that was right when all the regulations were, well, the lack of regulations really, with things like a Roundup being used. So that was the year that so many things changed, was the end of the 80s, was the way that our agriculture system started really transforming. So that's when glyphosate, which is better known as Roundup, started getting dumped in the just millions upon millions of pounds without anyone really knowing that big change occurred. So the end of the 1980s and the early 1990s is when we start to see absolute explosion of all sorts of disease rates.
Yeah.
So things like allergies, but also nervous system conditions. So people getting MS and Parkinson's and all sorts of things. Those rates can be tracked to start exploding and going exponential right at that time. And I think when you look at what is happening to the body on a physical level, when it comes to those chemicals and pesticides being used so widely in our food for the first time in history, it makes so much sense, because you've got a chemical that is acting not only to kill herbs, but it's killing bacteria, it's killing fungi, and it's not just killing those things in the soil, it's killing those things in the human body. So when we consume food, it's directly affecting the microbiome. And so the less of those pesticides and herbicides we can get into our body, then the healthier our microbiome will be as a result. And we depend on our microbiome for a healthy emotional, mental, and physical body, because we depend on our gut microbiome for our cell-to-cell communication.
Yeah,
so
everything.
For our cells to communicate and keep our immune system strong and healthy, it depends on having a thriving community in the gut of healthy bacteria. And
Wow.
I think that when people get their hands in that soil and they start growing their own food, they start growing their own medicines again, you start bringing biology and biodiversity back to the body. And that has a tremendous, tremendous effect on your nervous system and really does help on all levels with stress. And so that's why I think when they say gardening is so good for stress relief, it's not just the act of ripping out those weeds and being in the sunshine. It's like you're breathing in a new biome for your body.
Yeah. Yeah. And just getting connected with nature and being outdoors. People are lacking in just those basic things too. Getting sunshine and, like you said, getting your hands in the dirt.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Look back at, you know, the way we're created, back at nature and the way things are meant to be.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that you brought up. I didn't know that about 1989 or end of the 80s being when, but it makes perfect sense. And I've also heard, now that we're, you know, another generation removed from that, I've also heard and I've seen that the children of these children now are born with an even more compromised immune system, body function. So it's even more important. And so I love that you have the awareness and you're raising your kids and you're doing the community outreach. It really makes a difference. And it inspires a vision for everyone to learn these things and to do what you can and then teach others, right?
Yeah, I think we could talk for another hour just
Absolutely.
about generational effects of health and how that impacts. But if for any listeners that are wanting more information, there were some interesting studies done by Weston A. Price, and he did something called the cat studies. And he found out that whatever he did to the mother cat affected 10 generations down the line.
Wow.
So whatever you're eating in your body really affects your offspring, and not just your offspring, but because the genetic blueprint is so affected, you're affecting your great, 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 great grandchildren. And, but you have the potential in this lifetime to start shifting that again.
Exactly.
So whatever we're doing for ourselves and for our children, we are going to give them the healthiest blueprint going forward. Yes. And the more we learn about genetics and epigenetics and microRNA and all these things, it's not this like, oh no, you know, my parents ate poorly and I ate poorly, so it's, you know, I can't do anything about it, because we can't change the past, but what we do today so strongly affects even the current genetics that we have, and we can build an entirely new body and be so thrivingly healthy based on what we're doing now. So even though it can be a little bit depressing to learn more about how these things have impacted our genetics, it's not something that we should get overwhelmed and give up on, because what we are eating and putting in our body can make such a big difference. And the body does heal so amazingly. Within like 3 days, you have practically an entirely new gut. So it's amazing how quickly, when you give your body the right ingredients and you help foster a healthy microbiome and support the nervous system, you really do become far more resilient to stress, and you feel those differences in your energy levels and in your mental health, and it's dramatic. So it's never too late.
Yes, exactly. I was going to ask you that. What about someone? So you're giving people hope, and I love that, because that's what we need, is hope and encouragement. So, and I love too that you said it affects generations down. So even if you do have that belief that it's too late for me, then do it for your kids, grandkids, you know, let's
for everybody else.
Yeah. Change the paradigm all the way. I was going to ask you, what else was I going to ask you? On the products that you make yourself, and people might not be there yet, but I'm just curious, how long they keep. Like when you make a tincture or something, does it keep for, or do you put a date on it and stick it in the fridge? How does that work if you're going to do your own?
So depending on the formula that you make. So if you have, say, dried herbs, you want to use up dried herbs within that year, ideally, and keep them out of sunlight in like an amber dark jar in a cupboard, sealed from oxygen, because light and oxygen will degrade your herbs faster.
Okay.
So make sure you store your herbs properly. Storage is important. When you buy herbs, make sure they've been stored properly as well. But when you make a tincture, now you've got, usually with a lot of herbs, up to 10 years. So you can
Oh,
make
wow.
something that, is quite a volume of something that you use frequently and have it for a long time. So
Nice.
yeah.
That's really interesting. Well, you've inspired me to want to get. So it's like we know this information, but we kind of get lazy, right?
It can be, yeah, and that's okay for, for some people, they might be so passionate about natural health, but not passionate about medicine making as much. So it's great to then know where your interest and your passion lies, because you can still
Yes.
support your neighbor down the street who may be very passionate about
Right.
making the medicine. And so
Yeah.
if we follow what's really calling us, then we can really support each other, and our community in general, when it comes
Right.
to shifting the narrative away from giving money to these giant corporations and pharmaceutical companies to your next door neighbor who's growing vegetables and your herbalist friend down the street.
Right. Yeah, I love that. A community support system. I love that. We used to be part of a, when I didn't have the garden anymore, we were part of an organic co-op. And so that worked really well.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. The food's delicious. You get probably twice as much food for the money. It came straight from the farm. They lasted for 2 or 3 weeks in the refrigerator as opposed to 2 days,
Well, when you go to the store, the food is usually harvested right before it's even at its peak ripeness.
Right.
And then it's, it's on a truck, and then it's in
It
a
has to
warehouse.
travel.
It has to travel so far. And when you think of, for example, vitamin C content, like spinach loses 17% of its vitamin C every single day. So by the time you go to the grocery store and you get that spinach and then you put it in your fridge, it can already be quite old and quite degraded in nutrition. So when you go right into your own garden, or you go to your local farm and you get vegetables and fruits that were picked that day, the nutritional benefits are just out of this world. And you, like you said, the flavor, you notice it's like the best broccoli you ever tasted, because it has everything that it's supposed to have, and it grew in soil that was nourished and well-rounded, instead of soil that's been used with chemical agriculture or tilled. And unfortunately, when we lose our topsoil and we lose all those nutrition, that the nutrition that's supposed to be in the soil supporting that broccoli, as one example, then it can't possibly taste the same, because it's lacking so much.
Exactly. This we might be going a little bit sideways, but that made me think. That made me think of another question. What is your opinion on, because I've thought about this, we just moved from a townhouse at the beach. And so we didn't have, we had a courtyard, not a yard. So we thought about getting like the garden towers or this or that, but I'm just wondering, so much of the nutrition comes from the soil. Is that something you would recommend? I mean, I know it's better than, at least you're growing your own food and you know where it's coming from, but are you getting the nutrition, I guess?
Yeah, so you're still, whatever soil you're using in your garden, even if you're doing container growing on your balcony, it's going to be better than getting it from, a farm that's in a whole different part of the world and then trucked up here. It's, it might not be
sprayed with massive chemicals.
Exactly.
What about the ones that are the little air pod ones, though, where they just have the roots going down into a tube and they don't have any soil? That's what I was like
the hydroponic sort of thing. Yeah, for me, it's like, if the plant can't get the nutrients, then you can't eat the nutrients.
I was kind of wondering the same thing.
Yeah, and that's what a big problem with the whole NPK fertilizer thing is, because you're forgetting about all the trace minerals and other things that the plant needs to be healthy, but then our bodies need to be healthy. So if the plant and the food doesn't have those 80 plus minerals, then we don't get them. So those minerals are not made in the body. Those are raw building materials, and we only get them to utilize in our body if we get it from our food. And if the food can't get it from the soil, we can't get it from the food.
Right. So you might think you're eating healthy when you have throw that spinach in your smoothie. But like you said, by the time, I didn't know that if it's 5 or 6 days old, then
it's just very little,
basically.
And if that spinach was grown in soil that was completely devoid of all of the trace minerals and various nutrients that it needed, it might look pretty because it had potassium and nitrogen and phosphorus dumped on it, so it grew, but it's still lacking in all of the other things that we need.
So yeah, this is really enlightening and hopefully inspiring people to really dig in and learn and take action on what they can do to help themselves feel better. I love your story.
Thank you.
You look so beautiful and so healthy. I can't imagine you ever not being healthy. But I
I
know
am
that.
tremendously grateful that the information came to me when it did, because I was still a teenager and I was able
Yeah.
to have my 3 babies, completely natural pregnancies.
Wow.
They've never taken a pharmaceutical. They've, every time they've had a fever or any childhood illness, they've blown through it just so easily and
Right.
gracefully. And I've been able to use things just to support their bodies, but not force anything. And I'm just really
That's great.
grateful to be able to have
Absolutely.
given that to them.
Absolutely. I've done studied essential oils for a number of years too, and use those. My family at first called me, because remember, my family's all medical. So I was kind of the weird hippie chick, and they all kind of laughed at me. But over the years, I now have people call me going, "Now, what would you suggest for this or that?" Because they work. They work.
So that
So
was the same for my parents. At first,
uh-huh.
they thought that I had gone off the rails,
Right.
and then they started to see the results, and
Exactly.
they slowly got on board, and then within, I'd say, 10 years, they completely did a 180, and
Right.
now they eat all organically. They have their own
Nice.
big
Nice.
garden. My dad has done like liver cleanses, and
Wow.
he's really just taken all of my advice, and he eats kefir on all of his food and sauerkraut with everything.
Wow.
And
Wow.
those, for people who are like, wow, this is a lot of information. What small
Mhm.
steps can I do?
That was my next
Fermented
question.
foods, yeah,
Right.
fermented foods and herbal medicines are two super easy things to do. So
Okay.
I say to people, water is free. Get yourself a good filter and make sure you're
Mhm.
drinking filtered water. But drink water. That's the most important place to
Hmm.
start for flushing things out.
Mhm.
Start to choose foods that are, even if you can't do 100% organic, look at the Clean 15 list on the
Uh-huh.
EWG, so you can get foods that have the least amount of pesticide residue. And
Mhm.
then start eating fermented foods. So a little bit of sauerkraut with your meals, or a little bit of
Mm.
kefir, which is very similar to yogurt, but
Uh-huh.
more rich in its biodiversity when it comes to probiotics and beneficial yeasts and things. So that's
Mhm.
something you can eat as a condiment, and it's not a big deal to add to
To
your
add
daily
it in.
routine.
Right.
You're
Right.
already eating it. And then herbal medicines, just have your own tincture or capsule of these, or tea if you prefer making tea in the evenings, and just add that
Mhm.
into your daily routine. And you can start really small, and the results are really big when you stay consistent with these small
Right.
things.
And it sounds like that people will see results relatively quickly.
Yeah, with food, like it's sort of like that Maslow's pyramid. So if you start
Uh-huh.
giving yourself the nutritional building blocks that you may have been lacking, you're going to
Mhm.
start feeling better relatively quick. Actually, some people, funny enough, start feeling worse before they feel
Right.
better, because your body finally has the
Right.
nutrition to detox the things it's been
Exactly.
holding on to. So if
Mhm.
you do start to see some skin eruptions or get headaches,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, that can be normal and actually a good sign. And then increase your water intake again,
Mhm.
because you want to keep flushing that stuff out. But
Mhm.
within, I would say, 3 to 6 months, you won't even look at yourself in the mirror and recognize yourself if you make these
That's
changes. Like
awesome. That's
it is
awesome.
so dramatic. Yeah. And then, like 7, 8 years down the road, you would need a telescope to look back and see how far you've gotten.
That's great. I love that. Well, this has been great. So I was going to ask you for action steps, but you did that. That was perfect. Just so people have a takeaway that they can do at home to get started and kind of put their toe in the water. And I know, like you said, once you see results, then you just want more and more. Once you start feeling better, it's almost like an addiction. You have
It
to,
is exciting. It's
right?
exciting when something works.
Yeah, and you
So,
can't go back. You can't know something and unknow it and go back. You just can't. So
well,
I
we're
know that
smacking
you're.
your rose-colored glasses right now.
Yeah, yeah. I know that your talk has inspired a lot of people to learn more, and so I know that you have a gift. I hate that we have to come to an end here. I'm going to put your
Mhm.
title of your gift and let you tell people about the gift, and then we will have a link to the gift under the video. And I'm going to try to remember to also link a couple of the resources that you suggested.
Perfect. Yeah, so I just created a very simple guide for using herbal medicine for stress management. So it'll have a few self-assessment tools you can go through and
Nice.
so sort of prompt yourself to find out what are your personal triggers, what areas
Mhm.
in your life or your body are you most struggling with, and how can you incorporate herbal medicines as allies to help you with stress management.
I love that. That's so cool. And I know people are going to jump on that for sure.
Well, enjoy. And
And
my
then,
link for any further questions and things is there as well. So.
okay, perfect. Do you mind mentioning the two books that if you remember the two that you mentioned, so I can put a link below?
The one that I read when I was a teenager?
Yes.
That one? So that was, I believe this was Kevin Trudeau's Natural Cures. It was
Okay.
Natural Cures, it was called. And that one is just so in depth about everything from what
Right.
you're eating to rebounding to using sound frequencies. Like it really touched on everything.
Okay.
So if you
Nice, nice.
want a good,
I actually think I have 3 of his books behind me. If I
probably.
could put my hand on it right away, I would hold it up, but
Yeah. And another one of my favorite authors, for those specifically interested in herbal medicine, he'd
uh-huh.
recently passed away, but he was such a beautiful man. And his name is Stephen Herod Buhner. And
Okay.
any one of his multiple books are phenomenal.
Okay.
Let's see if I can just pop up here and see some of my
Perfect.
favorite. Um, there's the Secret Teaching of Plants and Sacred
Okay.
Plant Medicine.
Nice.
Oh, The Lost Language of Plants by him. That must be my
Oh,
favorite one. The Lost
okay.
Language of Plants. So if you're someone who's an
Perfect.
avid reader and you love, especially writing that is almost poetry in the way it's put
Mm,
together, then Stephen really is
okay.
one of my favorite authors.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This has been great. And the whole thing about the summit is to give people hope that they can feel better. They can step out of this stuck space of feeling isolated and stressed and fearful. We don't have to do that. We've
No,
given so many great tools, and some are physical body, some are the mental body, but they all work together. And I just love all our speakers. I'm going to bring you on so I can say thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I
thank you
really
for having
appreciate
me.
you.
Yeah. No, I can really honestly say after working with so many different clients over the last
Mhm.
15 years who've gone through rapid transformation
Mhm.
in not only their weight and their energy levels, but with improvement in digestive symptoms and sleep and hormonal issues, changing your diet and focusing on these lifestyle
Yeah,
measures and introducing herbal medicines, it does work. And it will be different for every person
yeah,
depending on what's going on for you. But when you
right.
make these little gradual, sustainable changes, you notice the difference.
It's worth it. It's worth it, taking the steps and just keep going and feel better on the other side, right? A little at a time.
Absolutely.
I
Thank you
love
so
it. That's what I'm
much.
saying. I just love that you've given us inspiration and encouragement. So, and thank you. I really appreciate
Yeah,
you. And we will be in touch. I'm gonna take advantage of your free gift too.
awesome. Well, so nice to be here.
Right. You've inspired
Enjoy
me
the
to
rest
get
of
my
the summit.
garden going, get my garden going again.
That's where I'll be headed right after this.
Nice, nice.
Time to
Thank you
water.
so much. Have a great day.
You as well. Thanks. Bye.
Bye bye.